For decades, if you wanted a cheap cruise, you just waited until the last minute and grabbed a clearance cabin.
Not anymore. Royal Caribbean's actually charging those late bookers a premium right now.
Which is just wild. Welcome to Earnings Unscripted. We're looking at Royal Caribbean Group, ticker RCL. It's their second quarter of 2026, and for the record, today is 2026-0728.
And the demand clearly shows up in the results. Scarcity is very real, so they're basically penalizing people who procrastinate.
Yeah, their results are really solid. Revenue grew about 6.5% year over year, and adjusted EPS came in at $4.21, which comfortably clears expectations.
And the stock had this incredibly dramatic morning. It dropped hard in the early pre-market, then just ripped right back up and trended aggressively higher, closed up over 5% against the previous close.
Buying that pre-market dip would have easily paid for a top-tier beverage package. Though obviously this is just our personal take on the market and absolutely not formal financial advice.
A very expensive beverage package. But that's actually the other fascinating thing about this quarter. They digitized the onboarding so well that over 50% of all onboard revenue is now transacted before anyone even gets on the ship.
Wait, before they board? So the vacation budget is getting drained while people are still sitting in their living rooms packing suitcases?
Yes, by the time they hit the gangway, the high-margin excursions and drink packages are already locked in. The app effectively turned the waiting period into a point of sale.
That's brilliantly evil, or just brilliant. I don't know. It frees up your first day on the ship to just relax instead of standing in line to book a zip line.
It's operational leverage disguised as convenience. And it's working nicely because operating cash flow is thick enough to cover their pretty aggressive shipbuilding costs right now.
Right. But that brings me to the massive disconnect I'm stuck on. I really need to understand how they hold all this unbelievable pricing power, yet they still guided to completely flat net yields just for Q3 because of some delayed dry docks and European headwinds.
Yeah, that guidance definitely looks weird on the surface, but, you have to separate the revenue narrative from the expense timeline. The flat net yield guide is really just a cocktail of two different headaches.
Okay, pour me a glass. What's in the mix here?
First, geographic mix. You've got prolonged conflict in the Middle East dragging on Mediterranean demand. They explicitly called out global events creating yield headwinds there. Second, expense timing. They pushed a bunch of dry dock ship maintenance into the back half of the year.
Wait, hold on. If they push maintenance to the fall, does that actually drag down the yield metric? I thought net yield just measured ticket sales and onboard spending.
No, you're exactly right. It doesn't. Net yield only tracks revenue minus variable costs, like commissions. The dry dock costs hit the broader operating margin. I kind of mashed those points together. The flat yield guide is purely about that Mediterranean deployment losing its premium pricing because of the geopolitical jitters. But overall profitability gets squeezed from both ends.
Got it. So Europe's complicated right now, which means they really have to lean on their core Caribbean routes. I guess that explains why they're pushing so hard on these shorter weekend trips.
Absolutely. They're pivoting aggressively into these 3 or 4 day itineraries. Millennial and Gen Z cruisers now make up roughly half their guest base. And honestly, the financial data there blew my mind.
Okay, why? Do younger passengers just spend more per day on the app?
Well, yes, but I think it's bigger than that. They're spending the exact same amount of total money on a short 3-day trip as a legacy customer historically spends on a full 7-day cruise.
Wait, seriously? How do you even compress a whole week's spending into 72 hours?
You hit the private island, book an expensive cabana, get the premium beverage package, and basically cram all the high-margin upgrades into a long weekend. The daily velocity of cash leaving their wallets is staggering. Liberty had a line about this. He said, "We're seeing about 180,000 people on any given day spent," which is obviously a good sign or a good indicator of the health of the consumer.
I mean, I guess if you only have a Friday to Sunday off work, you don't budget pinch. You just want the absolute maximum dopamine hit per hour.
Exactly. And if they can't get you on a quick ocean getaway, they're now coming for the river cruise market too.
I saw that briefly, the new Celebrity River project, but river cruising always feels like I don't know, a much older, slower demographic to me, just staring at vineyards from a very quiet deck.
Usually, yeah, but Royal wants to wake that market up. They're essentially airdropping their high-end ocean aesthetic straight onto European rivers. Liberty actually gave a great visual on the call. He said, especially for our celebrity customers, we're effectively miniaturizing an edge-class ship and putting it on river.
Miniaturizing a megaship. That honestly sounds like a physics problem. Those edge vessels have, massive glass venues and floating bars? You can't just slide that under a tiny bridge in Budapest.
Right, that's the real engineering challenge. But if they pull it off, they command a massive premium in a sector where the hardware is mostly outdated. It's all part of this master plan to lock customers into a lifetime ecosystem.
Catch them in their 20s with the party weekends, upgrade them to a massive ocean suite in their 40s, and then slide them onto a luxury river boat later on.
All without them ever leaving the brand family. And they cement it with that new Royal One credit card they just launched. Early data says cardholders are twice as likely to cruise multiple times. You basically trap the loyalty points inside the walled garden. But this massive expansion playbook isn't friction-free.
Okay, meaning what? Where's the catch?
Well, they desperately need new destination capacity in the Western Caribbean to park all these ships. And they've been banking on this massive Mexican development hub in Mahahual.
Oh, right, building out another exclusive private resort town.
Right, except the Mexican government just effectively hit the brakes. They're putting it through intense community and environmental review. Management really hedged the timeline on the call.
Okay, so if that private port gets delayed, suddenly you have a traffic jam of billion-dollar ships with nowhere exclusive to go?
Exactly, and your premium pricing completely depends on those exclusive stops. So yeah, they're trying to build a perfectly enclosed ecosystem, but occasionally they just crash right into sovereign politics.
It feels so much like a tech platform play. You build a walled garden where leaving just costs the user too much friction. But I really wonder how long you can run a software-style playbook on a hardware-heavy business before physical reality slows you down.
That's exactly the friction point. You can optimize the app and the pricing algorithms all day, but eventually, you still have to park $1 billion piece of steel in a physical port. If the local government pushes back on your Mexican destination project, your software playbook hits a very hard physical wall.
Right, because without those exclusive stops, you can't keep commanding that premium pricing, which actually bleeds into what they're saying about the next few months.
Yeah, management seems to agree because they're already acknowledging some near-term reality checks. For the third quarter, they expect net yields to be roughly flat, mostly because the prolonged conflict in the Middle East is continuing to drag on Mediterranean sailings.
The market's generally pretty forgiving of geopolitical noise, but there's a cost angle too, right?
There is. They benefited early in the year by shifting a bunch of dry dock maintenance to the back half, so upcoming quarters face a heavier cost burden right exactly when that European yield headwind hits.
So you get the deferred maintenance bills precisely when your European premium softens. But does that actually crack the broader growth story?
I don't think so, because they still raised the full-year outlook across the board. They guided full-year adjusted earnings per share to a range of $17.73 and $17.87. Their scale just absorbs a lot of those regional shocks, and the 2027 bookings are already pacing ahead of historical volumes.
It's just funny, we spent this whole time dissecting their digital wallet ecosystem, and the biggest headwinds are essentially foreign policy and boat repairs.
Always comes back to the hardware. You can't virtualize a dry dock.
True. I think that's a perfect place to drop anchor.
See you next time.
If you want to keep exploring the markets with us, hitting follow in your app makes sure you won't miss a thing. To pull back the curtain, it's worth noting this entire show, our synthetic voices included, was written and produced by AI on the exact same day these massive cruise filings dropped. We'd love your thoughts or ticker requests, so shoot an email over to earningsunscripted@datamadness.ca or grab that X link in the show notes.
Until next time.